know for
So
sure.
Brenna and Josh are the ones that would have to
Three
let you
mile
know that.
Probably at the time.
And
Is that something the manager's office would know, or?
I mean, I checked in today and there's no packets turned in, so that's, yeah. Yeah, and I keep trying to prod them and they don't want to let me
Because
know.
they talked
So-
about,
Got this short stick, poor guy. Okay, there we go.
they talked about the, I got a lot of questions about that SEH report.
Yeah.
But I don't, see, that's the thing, I don't know, thank you, Katie, for the. Sure. I don't know if we, I need to find out if we can,
Thank
Let me
you.
pass it down.
because
Well, they put my name on it.
technically, legally, whatever kind of way you want to look at it, are we supposed to just strictly stick to the annexation?
I think we gotta figure it
Talk
out.
about
I don't think
the
it's
report,
as bad as,
which
yeah,
actually
I think
is
it's just a
part
go
of
as.
the annexation packet, so,
I always ask those questions.
yeah,
There you
yeah.
go. Good idea.
Well, that's what I was, yeah, I was thinking, I don't know.
Are you gonna run again? Are you gonna run?
For the mayor.
Well, I'll send yours, you send mine,
I
like
would,
last
I'd
time?
like to ask Michael.
Like last time?
It sounds like he would be the,
I'm like, dude,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I've been trying to convince her to do it.
Katie, is Becky
She
on
goes,
Zoom?
only if you do it. So not, because at first she's like, look, are you
If
gonna?
you'd like to sign for your fellow.
Hmm.
Sounds good.
I'm here for 2 more years.
You're an asset.
You're gonna have to deal with it.
It's for me, John. He's like,
What did we ever do before this little sidebar thing here? It's pretty slick.
we would scroll through each
Oh,
page,
yeah.
up and down and up and down, and not with the finger like this.
Yeah, it was like the,
Click, click, click. It's warm in here.
Whose is that?
that was just me.
hey, Brenna,
Yeah,
how many signatures do you need?
10.
I don't know.
10?
Oh, it is 10. There you go.
We'll have to ask.
That's doable.
Oh, I thought I had to get past that.
Well, you can.
You should get
you
more
You
because
should, you
some-
should get more just
Yeah,
in
something's
case
been
somebody's.
validated or
Yeah,
Right,
somebody
yeah,
did
address
something
doesn't
wrong.
match or whatever. We'll look into it first thing tomorrow.
I was like, what is my password? Becky's on.
You're just jealous.
Exactly.
Here, you can give that back to Brenna, if you wouldn't mind.
Pass her on down.
Thanks, guys. You sign mine.
Dave, you got your computer ready?
Yeah.
I'll give you a minute here.
Agenda twice. Fully choked on my sandwich on the way here. Trying to eat a sandwich real quick for, I already got hers. There you go. I was gonna say, I don't need your pen. Thank you.
Just curious. No. All right, David, you ready? Everybody ready? Is that a yes? All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order dated Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. It is now 6:30. Roll call, please.
Trustee Black. Here. Trustee Dallison.
Here.
Trustee Joswick.
Here.
Trustee Moreland.
Here.
Trustee Politis. Here. Trustee Cesaro. Here. And Mayor Tarkington.
Here.
All present.
All right. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right. Does the board have any conflicts of interest to announce at this time? Seeing none. We will move on to general public input. I just want to remind everyone in the room that we do have a sign-up sheet at the back of the room to get on the email list, and we do really appreciate all of these written comments and your continued involvement in these meetings. So at this time, I would welcome anybody that would like to address the board. We have limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Hey.
Welcome back.
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. Just in general, I guess because this is a lame duck board, in some way or another, I'm not going to go into a bunch of stuff tonight, but I would encourage those who stay, or if you talk to people about coming on the board, that you explain to them how important it is that we have a vision and a plan for how we move forward from really this point on. Bayfield's going to change big time here quick. And I think that we can do it in a really responsible, creative, unique manner. But we need you, our defense, on how to get that done. So thank you. And for those who have served or are serving, will serve, have served, thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excuse me just a second. You know, they're, what's his name, Brian?
Brian.
Hey, Brian? Yes. There are applications available, you know, for being on the board.
Yeah, reminded of that, I don't know.
You're here every time anyways.
And a planning commission seat open.
You know, that's an okay thing. It really is.
All right.
I am Bob Romero, and I reside at 1725 North Taylor Circle here in Bayfield. Hi, Josh.
Hey, Bobby, how you doing?
And hi, David. And I bought a place there in July. And I called the city to ask if I could take my own trash to my business, which I have a business in Durango. And they agreed with me, in which they credited me on the trash pickup. But last month, I received a letter from the city, or from the town of Bayfield, stating it's against code, and that's why I'm here, to state my case. And I take my trash, I'm tidy.
But I don't think I can hear anybody else.
Well, we can hear you.
I was about to say the same thing.
I just text Kathy to let her know that they're muted.
Okay.
Do I have to start over?
I have to start over.
Are we back?
We good?
I think we're good. We're good.
And that's why I'm here tonight, to ask to see if maybe we can have a waiver, or we can discuss that and see what you think. And I'm also here because I found out that my road that we live on, my little stretch there in Dove Ranch, the city doesn't plow. And I have done some legwork, and I'm finding out things. And that's another thing I want to address. Of course, I was born and raised in Durango, and I just arrived here about 15 years ago and lived on 525. I lived rural, but I moved into the city this last year. And so that surprised me. And I'm here to ask why. And I dug some things up, and I kind of know why, but I want your input, or I'd like your input. So that's why I'm here.
Okay. This is our time to listen, and we will address those questions.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else that would like to address the board? Anybody on Zoom? All right, seeing none, we will move on. Attorney Goldman, would you like to address the board?
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Yes.
All right, super. Hey, you have on your agenda tonight a matter concerning annexation and an annexation agreement, and there has been some correspondence that was delivered to you guys today. And in that correspondence, the Ms. Tone, on behalf of one of the adjacent landowners, is requesting that you guys continue the matter for at least a couple of weeks. And I just wanted to make the board aware of annexations in particular have some limitations and constraints with regards to continuances, and specifically at CRS 31-12-108, sub 3, it does say that the governing body of the annexing municipality from time to time may continue the hearing to another date without additional notice if the volume of material to be received cannot be presented within the available time for any given session, except that no session of a hearing shall be so continued unless at least 1 hour of testimony has been heard. So if there is any serious desire to continue the hearing, the public hearing on this matter, without initiating the public hearing and going through an hour's worth of testimony, you'll necessarily have to renotice and publish the annexation petition. So I just wanted to give everybody that preamble to the meeting today. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Did everybody get a chance to look at the agenda?
I would move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, did everybody get a chance to go over the minutes from January 4th, 2022?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from January 4th, 2022.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to our department reports. Parks and Rec. Becky, do you have anything to add to your report?
Yeah, I got one update. As most of you already know, the school district, Bayfield School District, decided to close classes for the week. They asked us to follow suit with them since we do use their gym space and recess space from them. So we have canceled all programs for the rest of the week and hopefully can resume on Monday. So adult indoor soccer and youth basketball has been canceled this week.
Okay, thanks for the update. Does the board have any questions for Becky?
So would you like to have Public Works respond to the 1725 North Taylor Circle?
Yes, absolutely.
If there's no question, didn't mean to interrupt that portion of it for Becky.
Yes. Do you have, Jeremy, you have anything on?
So, I guess to address the 1725 North Taylor Circle, those portions of the access to those homes are privately owned. It's a private drive. The town does not maintain those, nor does it maintain the alleys between north or south Dove Circle and Taylor Ranch, or the cul-de-sac that's directly south of the private drive that you currently reside. Those were originally maintained by the HOA, which has dissolved, and the town doesn't necessarily have, I guess, any authority over those privately owned sections or access to those residents.
Thank you for that clarification, Jeremy. Sorry, did anybody have any questions for Becky? I just wanted to make sure we can move on from that as well. Okay. At this time, we'd like to introduce Nicole Killian, our Community Development Director.
So Nicole Kelly is sitting here in the back. She will start on Monday. We're very excited to get her going. Obviously, she's been paying attention to our agendas and our emails even before her start date. So we're really excited to have her on board.
Welcome and thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Kathy Cathcart, do you have any updates?
Sure. On the December 2021 financial statements?
We're talking about
Yeah, sorry,
No.
trustee packets.
Nope, I don't have.
Okay, just,
No.
just for anyone interested, we do have some seats available on this board
yes,
coming
we
up.
do have
And
seats available.
you can swing by Town Hall and pick up a packet if you're interested. Those are due the
They're
24th?
due Monday by 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock. All right, now moving on to our financial agenda.
Okay.
The December 2021 financial statement.
Okay. Okay, just for some highlights in the general fund, revenues are at 104% of what was budgeted. Expenditures are 94%, and we're $136,000 revenue over expenditures in that fund. In the Conservation Trust Fund, we had a 10% increase in revenue collected above what was budgeted in 2021. In the Sewer Fund, over the year, we had 408,000 more in expenditures than what was budgeted. This includes the purchase of Cinnamon Heights at approximately $700,000. But like I've told you before, this will be replenished with the ARPA funds later this year. In the Water Fund, our revenues are 53% over budgeted revenues, and expenditures are at 76%. So we have a difference of $111,000 in the positive. This includes the misbilled ERTs that we paid out at the cost of approximately $174,000. And in the street fund, we are 6% revenue over budget, with only 61% of expenditures used. That's because the paving and the resurfacing projects were not completed in 2021. That's it. Any questions? Good.
Thank you, Kathy. I think I could probably speak for the board, but we appreciate this breakdown.
I love
and
it.
the way this is presented.
It appeals to my banker soul.
Does the board have any questions for Kathy?
It is very thorough.
I would entertain a motion at this time to approve the December financial statement.
So moved?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to sales tax. That is included in your packet. It remains strong. I don't know if the board has any questions or comments, or Katie, if you have anything to add.
I don't have anything to add. It is strong, both La Plata County and, or our share of La Plata County sales tax and the town's sales tax.
Okay. At this time, I would like to close the regular meeting and open up the public hearing. Keep in mind that we will have a staff presentation. We will have an applicant presentation. We will have time for public input, and then we will have time for responses. I would appreciate if everyone could step up to the microphone, state their name, address, and their questions for the record so that we can keep these on file. So at this time, we would welcome the staff presentation.
That's you, Chris.
Good evening, Chris Hawkins with Alpine Planning. And a schedule, right?
Yay.
So
Don't jinx it.
it's up. just as far as the site, I think everyone's familiar with where it's at in the town and the underlying request. So I'll take this off. The annexation process itself, you initiated that with the initial resolution that started the process. It set the hearing for today as well as the planning commission meeting last week. Those hearings were published, and then planning commission meeting last week, they recommended approval of the rezoning. So that allows you to basically go forward tonight and consider the annexation and rezoning together. That's a rather huge packet I sent to you, so hopefully you didn't fall asleep reading it. There's a lot of good information in it overall in terms of what's being requested this evening. Of course, my computer's doing Windows update. So anyway, as far as rezoning criteria, we went through that pretty extensively with the planning commission. Number one is compliance with the master plan. And so I think you remember that both the planning commission and council approved an amendment to the master plan to allow for this proposed rezoning at the R10 density overall. So that test is pretty well met. There's also a couple policies that I referred to in the staff memo that were related to encouraging housing development and having a range of housing. And certainly this neighborhood seems to make sense for single family development instead of, say, higher density multifamily development. There's also a contemplation of eventually extending right-of-ways into this area. If you look at the development pattern in the area, there's a right-of-way that actually heads out this way. So there's a direct contemplation of sometime in the future, yeah, we probably want a street going out here and we see there's going to be additional development. That's fairly common in most communities overall. One of the other things that we looked at in terms of the criteria for decision was environmental issues. And in terms of the environmental issues overall, it's agricultural land, so it's not like there's pristine wetlands or steep slopes or forests or anything like that. It's a fairly intensive use land. There's a gas well on it, so there's really no environmental resources on it. Per the other criteria, it's pretty straightforward. One of the weird considerations on this is the gas wells. That was fairly new to me. And actually the gas wells themselves are, oh, sorry, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I should have started that way, so. But the gas wells themselves requires a review permit underneath your zoning, and that's true in all zone districts, and that's a requirement of that annexation agreement as well too. One of the things that came out at the planning commission meeting as well that you should talk about tonight was the provision of public amenities, trails, parks, open space, etc. The planning commission included a condition that be provided overall. And so that is included in the draft annexation agreement in front of you to do that. And it's a fairly open-ended provision. I think the applicant understands there's a strong desire to have sidewalks, trails, open space parks. 85 lot subdivision, you're gonna have a lot of generation of that sort of desire. And I think that helps meet an additional master plan policy too, that was looked at. As far as the annexation agreement itself, it should be pretty straightforward. I'm glad to answer any questions you have on that. Tonight, as far as your options go for approval, we've set it up to where you could approve it if you feel it meets the rezoning and annexation criteria. It does meet the contiguity requirement and all the state statutory requirements for annexation. That's somewhat discretionary though. I mean, if like the criteria about is urban or will be urbanized in the near future, but your master plan seems to contemplate that. La Plata County had no questions or concerns on this and recognized it was consistent with the 3-mile plan. Other referral agency comments on this, they were either silent or said we have no issues. And in terms of water, sewer, those issues come up a bit. Your staff did not indicate any issues with infrastructure capacity whatsoever. A traffic impact report will be required for this proposed development. That has to be submitted, at least per the annexation agreement, at the time of the subdivision process. And the way the annexation agreement is set up, that requires an evaluation of roads leading up to the site. So if any of those roads are substandard, that impact report will document that, and you could require the developer to pay for the proportional cost of upgrading that And proportional means you look at the whole travel shed of who uses that road. And if they're, say, 50% of the travel shed, then they'd be responsible for 50% of the cost. If they're 15% of the trips generated, then they would be responsible for 15% of the costs. The fiscal impact analysis, that one I'm going to leave to the applicant to go through. There was a deficit identified of, I think it was around $13,000 or $14,000. And I'll let the applicant explain that overall and how they feel that that will still be made up for in the process. That was a concern during your last annexation or rezoning I was in front of you on in terms of fiscal impacts and making sure development paid it its own way. So sorry about that. I really don't like my computer right now. So.
That's how it works.
So hopefully I covered the bases, and I'm glad to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question. So I found the public amenity part, it was page 100 of the packet for those who want to go there, where it says the developer shall provide public amenities in the proposed subdivision, including, or it could be such as parks, open space, or trails that are separate from the required sidewalk. Are there, so I've seen what the sketch of the plan is with the homes. Is there, how do you then incorporate, because I was going to ask, is something like this going to happen? Because I'm just imagining that many more people walking their dogs or having their kids, and then the closest dog park is down here, where that's pretty far off. So I'm just kind of curious, what are like, how does that get incorporated?
The developer will listen to your comments tonight.
Okay.
And revise that plan. I mean, as far as sidewalks typically are required in residential
Yes.
subdivisions anyway. So an easy solution here is a perimeter trail around the outside of the subdivision on the back side of lots, which could be an easement, it could be an open space. There's a lot of ways to deal with that. But I'll let the applicant respond to what they're thinking about, because I know they're actively, with coming up with solutions to that question.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
A quick comment, question.
Sure.
Whichever. I guess I just need to make sure that is it accurate to say that what we're doing here this evening does not really constitute a consideration or an approval or denial of the development plan, right? I mean, or the plat, which as per the applicant is still at the conceptual stage. What we're dealing with, while we are looking at some of that and we are reading the reports on it, we are not dealing with that. Is that right?
That is correct. This does not vest property rights. It basically sets the stage for you, the town, to have a detailed review through the subdivision process, where you will look at the specific design and layouts of the lots and all of those things, including the location of parks, trails, open space, sewer design, street design, water design, all that stuff through it. I think it's a 3-step process with the town, sketch, preliminary, final. So you get basically 3 more bites at the apple of this. It just zones the property and sets the stage for the additional review processes that you have in your code.
Okay, so is Michael still on there? Yeah. Okay. I guess I have a follow-up question for that, Michael. Since we aren't dealing with the conceptual stage, the plan, or any of that stuff now, but it is in the packet, can we discuss that? Because I have questions about that, but if we're not dealing with that tonight, is now the time to discuss that? I hope it is, because I do have questions.
If you have questions of a general nature and what perhaps future thoughts are, I think that's perfectly appropriate. If you look at the packet, Mr. Hawkins laid it out pretty well for you. He identified the criteria that you guys are to review, the statutory criteria for annexation. And he laid out the criteria, and then he also provided the responses that he believes satisfy those criteria. So ultimately, despite your questions and the responses you may get, the ultimate review for you today is whether or not the statutory and constitutional criteria have been met. And again, that's all outlined in the packet. And that's what ultimately, when you're called to deliberate, that's what you'll be discussing for purposes of the annexation.
Okay, as we go forward here, I think you will probably stop me if I start asking questions that are maybe a little more pointed than generalized. Will you?
Yeah, and as you know, Trustee Jeswick, that during the subdivision process, you'll really have the opportunity to really identify issues with regards to the development. But it does not foreclose you from asking general questions about what general plans are today, as we sit here today.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any more questions, comments? I'd like to allow the applicant.
Probably have comments, but I think I'd like to listen to a little more of the hearing before I comment further.
Chris, do you have anything to add to?
No, you're
Okay. I would like to allow the applicant to step forward and give their presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Arnold. I'll be followed by the developer, Glenn Rosell, after I give this presentation. I'm with SEH. We're the agent for the applicant. I work as an economic development planner across Colorado, and so we were called in to help guide this development through a comp plan amendment process, an initial zoning process, and now this annexation process. And we'll continue to work with the applicant through the subdivision process as well. So first of all, I wanted to just do a very quick summary of where we are in terms of the process. I had mentioned that we have been working with the applicant since comp plan amendment. As you probably recall, we needed to do a comp plan amendment on this particular property. Your future land use plan had this labeled as open space. That was deliberated by Planning Commission, and that open space designation on your future land use map was changed to medium density residential. After that comp plan amendment was adopted, there was a neighborhood meeting that was led by the developer, and I want to stress that the developer has been as active as they can be, trying to hear responses from the neighboring community and neighbors in general about this development, and trying to take that into consideration as this sketch plan, subdivision plan evolves. So we are happy to take questions on that process later on, Trustee Jeswick. After that comp plan amendment was adopted and that neighborhood meeting was had, part of the Bayfield Land Use Code is to do an initial zoning. It's an oddity with annexations because technically it's called a rezone, but this is not currently property of the town. So it's the initial zoning if the property were to get annexed into the town. We applied for an R10 residential zoning. We believe that the R10 zoning matched the neighborhoods in the surrounding area. In particular, it's that minimum lot size requirement. The minimum lot size in an R10 zoning is 10,000 square feet. Currently, we are over 10,000 square feet with our average, and none of the lots are below that minimum. And that's very similar to the average lot sizes of the Mustang Crossing subdivision, which last time I checked was about 11,300 square feet is their average lot size. So it's in keeping with what is around it. That initial zoning meeting happened on January 11th. The Planning Commission recommended that zoning, which brings us here today with the annexation meeting. With this annexation, I wanted to summarize the development where we are currently. Again, it's conceptual in nature, but the applicant fully intends to go forward with a residential type development that follows that zoning code. Currently, we have 85 lots. I did bring a larger exhibit for where we are. I apologize that that's the only place we can hang it up. Maybe I can pass that around or leave that out for anybody who wishes to see where we are with the design. But it's 85 lots, and what I prepared for you in the packet is that fiscal impact analysis. That's one of the biggest concerns of communities when you're thinking about annexing land. You want to know, well, what's going to happen on this land and how is that going to impact our community? The worst thing that could happen is having a very large deficit that makes your budgets, your revenues and expenditures get out of whack, and that puts harm on the existing landowners, the existing taxpayers. So that's why we prepared this fiscal impact analysis. The first thing you want to look at is how many new residents could this development bring? Well, the state demographer's office says that on average in the town of Bayfield, it's about 2.29 residents per household. That's our multiplier. And so when we take that and we apply that to 85 lots, we had roughly 229 residents is what we were estimating. We also wanted to look at how many students can come from those lots. You know, how many students are going to enter into your school district. And when we looked at that, you know that the Bayfield School District isn't exactly in line with the town limits. So you have to look at the entirety of the Bayfield School District, and really what you have to look at is the county and how many students are, on average, assigned to each household. It actually comes out to a weird number, like 0.32 students per household throughout La Plata County. We used that as a multiplier, and we came out with 32 students that would be coming from, potentially coming from this development. We had conversations actually with a different annexation with your school superintendent, Dr. Ayton, and that's what his response regarding how the state funds new students was what we used as part of our fiscal impact analysis on the school district. I know the school district isn't really the topic of today's meeting, but it's very important to everybody in the town of Bayfield is knowing what that impact on the school will be. We also wanted to look at streets, because that's another big impact that may not be perfectly identified in your line items with your budgets and revenues. This is going to bring the street total. We looked at the total amount of streets throughout the town of Bayfield. We wanted to look at how many new linear feet of streets this development's going to bring. It's going to increase your total amount of streets by about 1%. So it's not a ton of new asphalt that would have to be maintained. Altogether, this development, we believe, would be somewhere north of $40 million of new market assessment. When you use an assessment ratio, that's about 7.7% of the town's current assessed value, the entire town of Bayfield. We looked at property taxes. We looked at what was called a per capita multiplier. We looked at your budgets. We went line item by line item. We wanted to see what does each resident bring in terms of revenue for the town of Bayfield, and what does each resident require in terms of expenditures for the town of Bayfield. Interestingly enough, your town's revenues and expenditures, when you look at residential development, follows a national pattern. For every dollar of new revenue that is produced by a residential development, it demands about $1.10 of services. So typically residential developments all over the United States are going to run some type of deficit. What we looked at with this development is that deficit, in my opinion, is minimal. It's about $13,900 when it's all said and done. That's at full build-out. That is still a deficit, but it's a deficit based on direct impacts. So what that means is that we were only looking at the direct revenues and expenditures assigned to a per person, per capita multiplier in the town of Bayfield. What it did not account for is new jobs, that could be created from this construction. It did not account for indirect benefits. What are those new residents going to spend their money on? It also didn't account for indirect benefits, such as if you are growing in population, does that mean that there could be new commercial development? And I want to especially highlight this to the board and to town staff. The town of Bayfield only collects about 3% of its revenue from property taxes, whereas 1/3 of its revenue is coming in one shape or form from sales tax, whether it's a county remittance or it's coming back from what is being reallocated by the state. So you can see that the majority of your money is coming from that commercial side. And residential development, while it doesn't directly create that commercial revenue or that sales tax revenue, it certainly indirectly helps support it. So going back to what we found, it was about a $14,000 deficit for the town at full build out for this development. The school actually has a high surplus. The school district was about $344,000 in surplus, and that has a lot to do with how much the state funds, how much new households have to pay an impact fee to the school district, and the school district collects a lot more property tax than the town of Bayfield if you look at its mill levies compared to yours. So all said and done, that is what encapsulates our fiscal impact analysis. In my opinion, I do not believe that this development is going to create a detrimental deficit to the town. And I think in light of what the comp plan has outlined as goals for housing, and also what your what is affecting all Colorado towns in terms of attainable housing, supply shortages in housing. We think that that also aligns with some of the goals that have been stated by this board and by the town. I'm going to let the developer come up to talk a little bit more about some of the changes in our sketch plan and how he has been actively reaching out to the neighborhood. But before I do that, any questions? Sorry, threw a lot of data.
No.
You're good.
I'll just ask one question. There was a term that you used in the report, equalized assessed valuation. What is that?
So what that means is that there's an assessment ratio. So if you have a building that's worth $1 million, a property that's worth $1 million, if it's a residential property, there's an assessment ratio attached to it. That assessment ratio in the state of Colorado is 7.15%. So if on the market your property is worth $1 million, its taxable value is only $71,500 if it's a residential property. Now, if it was a commercial property, the state's assessment ratio is 29%. So that same $1 million property, if it's a commercial use, would be $290,000 taxable value. It is after that what you apply your mill levies, and that's how you determine your property tax. So the equalized amount is actually referring to what the taxable value is.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
For whatever it's worth.
I'm sorry?
For whatever it's worth, that commercial rate stays at 29%. It never changes. When they do reassessments, it's always done on the low end on the residential. That's why it keeps dropping.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me were it to go to 6%, the way things are working. And this is something the state really does need to address. And that's not really part of this discussion, but in terms of stuff that we need to be paying attention to.
Thank you. That's, oh, you're speaking my language.
Okay,
Any other questions? We're good?
we're good
All right, I'm gonna
for the moment.
invite Mr. Moselle up to the podium.
Hello, and good evening. I'm Glenn Moselle from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I just wanted to personally say thank you to the board for your time and consideration on this. I wanted to thank staff for their help and guidance with this application. And I wanted to thank the neighbors for their feedback, especially the Ludwigs and the Tones for their input and comments. And to say we will continue to do our best to address and mitigate all the concerns that arise. So I do live out of state, but my Colorado roots go back 30 years. I used to live on the Front Range, and my first development project was in Longmont, Colorado in 1995. It was an 80-acre mixed-use project called Mill Village, and it was one of the first neo-traditional neighborhoods approved in the state. My partner, Jeff Jorgensen, is a Colorado resident, and he and his wife, Ann, have had a home in La Plata County for the past 30 years. So Jeff and I, more than anyone else, want to see the right neighborhood built. We're not looking to cut any corners. We're not looking to maximize density. We want to build what the city wants and needs, and we think this is going to be a fantastic addition to Bayfield. We envision tree-lined streets, picket fences, homes with big front porches, and many of the garages set to the rear. We originally didn't have a green belt in our concept plan, and we thought there really wasn't or isn't a green belt system in Bayfield or the surrounding neighborhoods, and so where would our green belt go? But that was a mistake. And listening to the neighborhood and reconsidering, we now think it's got to start somewhere, so let's start it here. And our new plan incorporates 6 acres of greenbelt, park, and open space. Our perimeter trail is now a mile loop around the property. We're envisioning crusher fines and interaction with the pocket parks. So again, we have a vision that this is going to be a fantastic neighborhood, that young families finishing dinner will say, let's go do a lap. And they'll meet their neighbors, they'll watch the sunset, and they'll say, man, we love this place. And how lucky we are to live in Bayfield, Colorado. So we're trying to bring the best project we can. And here to answer any questions. Thanks again.
So does the addition of the 6 acres in your plan, does that reduce the amount of lots that you're selling, or the size of the lots?
The size of the lots.
Size of the lots,
And
okay.
they still all have a minimum of 80-foot wide frontage.
Okay.
And a minimum of 10,000 square feet.
Oh, perfect, okay.
So with the addition of the 6 acres, I assume that development plan map isn't real accurate.
That map is a little more accurate with the perimeter trail.
Okay.
Okay.
That was an older map there.
Yeah, I mean, that would be nice, just for us to get a visual of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because from here, they look like they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Fine, you're fine.
That's all right.
So what are the changes?
Where's the 6 acres?
So what you can see here, and it's kind of shaded in, is this pressure fine path, which is actually a 30-foot,
Okay.
for lack of a better term, that goes around the perimeter. That is included in the open space calculation, 6 acres. It's amazing how much just a 30-foot wide, mile long
Okay.
piece does.
What is this
There's
down?
also a pocket park down here.
Ah, okay.
This will
Open
actually
space.
be used as, for drainage.
Cool.
It's gonna remain open space.
Okay, good. Move on down.
If I may, because this matter is being recorded, it's be very helpful, whoever is speaking right now, use the microphone and identify specifically what it is everyone is looking at and what you are describing.
All right, this is Andy Arnold from SEH. I'm the agent for the applicant. I am holding a 24 by 36 sketch plan of the conceptual design for the development to show the Board of Trustees where some of these proposed open space public amenities are on our current sketch plan. I'm saying there is approximately 6 acres of open space. It's about 17% of the total acreage of the site. The open space is, what constitutes the open space is the perimeter trail, also a pocket park towards the southern end of the site, and then there's also open space that would be used for drainage on the southwest portion of the site.
Trail. Pocket park. Oh, this. What is
Well,
a
and
smaller park?
see what I kind of see here is if you, once you do a little bit of a possible extension here on this adjacent property, there's the possibility of extending this pocket park area here to make it a more usable entity. Same thing with this open space that's shown right here, that will more than likely, of course, that's used for your detention facility, but certainly those can be seeded in such a manner that they become more usable spaces.
Is that where the well is?
Yeah.
I am kind of concerned that there's no road left to the north on Road D outside of the area away from Mustang. I see Mustang Drive extends on up there, but when you start looking at how traffic moves, the more paths, the better.
So what you're saying is,
Eventually there should be some type of a road going north out of this that is not dependent on Clover Drive for access, nor dependent on Louisiana Drive coming into this as primary access.
How is this going to connect with 526 at some point? That's what I was.
Yeah, that was why I'm saying this needs to go here somewhere
Interested.
to get to
Sorry. Thank you.
526.
You weren't
And,
expecting
you know,
He's
and
like, my
keep
arms
in
are
mind that,
falling
you know,
off.
there will be a traffic study done
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
road. Thank you.
That was Trustee Black making those comments. Just want to make sure that's clear.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I would like to open it up to public input, and keep in mind, I would like to have everyone address the board, ask your questions. If the board can kind of jot those down, or Katie, if you can help us keep tabs on questions, we will circle back and we will allow staff or applicants to answer those questions. We just need to be very clear on having these on record, so I want to avoid any banter back and forth from the audience. And at this time, I'd allow you to step forth and state your name and address.
Good evening. Kat Katzos, 525 Dove Ranch Road. I didn't come fully prepared, but listening to what was brought up today. I have an ongoing concern that we are in a 20-year drought, and there's no mention of water use and the impact. This deeply concerns me. If you consider that everybody in this room is a vested member of water use for this town, and we bring in 20 more people, and the one bucket that we had to share among us is now further divided by 20 more people. The town put in a drought plan last year. So I'd like to see the trustees, the planning commission, embrace the concern of water and do it legitimately, not in a sweeping, oh, we have plenty of water, we have plenty of water purifying capacity, but what do we really have? And pay attention to that. Per the lawyer's guidance, because you have so many projects coming up in your pipeline this year, is it worthy to package both an annex and a rezone together? Should you consider one at a time? Should you consider the bigger impact of what's coming down the pipe? We currently have zoned high, medium density land available, but now we're annexing in more. Again, that was accounted for in the comp plan. So I'd ask you to consider that. It's global versus project by project. The last thing that I would say is that when a developer comes in, they're not going to do this because it's out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing this because they're going to make money. So why should the town consider any deficit when accepting a proposed development? Seek that money up front, because once it's gone, it's gone. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. And I am going to step over to the screen that Manager Sickles has up with the new revised plat that has been proposed by the developer. So do I need to take a microphone with me?
Grab that.
So first of all, I am disappointed that we're not looking at R20 as a zoning size. I think that it's evident to everybody, common sense wise, that R20 would reduce all of the issues that may become negative. Having said that, it appears that you're moving forward with R10, and if that's the case, then I think you have the responsibility to really drill down on that and see how we can do that in the best possible manner for our town. And I do applaud SEH and Moselle, the developer, for producing a new revised map. I think that's a good start. He feels good about it. I feel okay about it. My concerns on it are a couple of things. One is he's counting in the retention pond as open space. I don't really have a problem with that. I'm not sure what the legality is on using a retention pond for gatherings or play for kids or any of that. Probably not encouraged. The other thing is he has added a perimeter trail around the entire property. That's a good thing, and it is a 30-foot easement, basically. I don't know how they're going to structure that as far as access and where that access will be, because there are no pass-throughs from the houses onto the trail itself. It'd be very limited on when you can get onto the trail. And then the other thing is he's counting open space on all the smaller areas. Waiting for the plat map.
Where'd it go? Try the Google one.
Holding on.
Did it open in the edge window you have down there? Yeah.
Here we go.
I see it over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So in the 6 acres, that is a nice sounding number, which would be great. What's happened here, though, is that it's been diluted into smaller areas. So even this pocket park is really, it says 2.6 acres, but that includes all of the perimeter. This is only about between 1/2 and 3/4 of an acre in its entirety. He's counting in the easement for the, I would assume, the irrigation ditch part. So there's a lot of little things that they're adding in. I don't mean to beat it down per se, but I think if he were able to increase the size of the pocket park so it was really a usable park, and make a minimum of 3 acres for a development this size. And that would be basically one area of about 3 acres so that the community could get together. No pass-throughs, any way to get around through the subdivision. That's one thing that Mesa Meadows had done a decent job of. They have a couple of those, and it does work. I live in Mesa Meadows, and I do use them all the time. So those kinds of things. And what he's done is he's just downsized the size of the lots to meet your R10, and he's thrown us a bone for a little bit of open space. If you're going to give him that, then I would encourage you to please make him open up a little more space for parks and gathering areas. I was kind of going through the website today, and I was looking at small 30-acre subdivisions, and I have a few of those. And it's interesting to look at, if you look at his subdivision, and then you look at another subdivision that is not quite 85 houses, but anywhere from 50 to 85, you'll notice that they encourage and add on a lot of open space and parks. It's part of what they do. And we have a chance, you have a chance right now to make this happen. I think Mr. Moselle really would like to do a quality subdivision. I believe that in my heart. We just need to help him get there. Thank you.
Thank you. We have anybody else that would like to give their input or ask questions?
Hi, my name's Kathy Francio. I live at 606 Magnolia Court. I've attended several meetings with regard to the proposed subdivision of Mustang Crossing, and I do still have some questions. One is addressed to traffic. Some of the observations, of course, I just moved here, and I do have to tell you, I have a personal thing that I moved on Magnolia Court so I could see the mountains, but they're taking that away with the subdivision. Some of my concerns, though, are on Clover Drive, coming into Louisiana as an access point. That road is very crowded in the afternoon with lots of people using it to pick up their children, and you can't hardly get through there if you're driving through with a vehicle. And at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Mosel said that there would be an increase of probably about 600 traffic episodes a day with people going in and out of the new subdivision. So with the main access looking to be through Louisiana, and Clover being so crowded, I just question if people have looked truly at the traffic patterns and how that many homes and people will impact the area. Mustang Drive, you know, the access point there, that's still a lot of traffic that's going to be dumping into Clover, and in my opinion won't go further to the north or the east, you know, to get out of that subdivision. But I would just hope that the board would look at a traffic assessment to make sure that accommodations are made. I'd like to support my neighbors in their efforts of bringing up concerns also regarding the green space. Walkways, I know Mesa Meadows did a really good job, but some things that I noticed too, again with traffic and those walkways, is a lot of parents bring their children to school and use the sidewalks and the walkways, and particularly at the corner of Clover and Louisiana, there is not much accommodation for pedestrian traffic, and I've observed 3 or 4 times where there's been an issue, in my opinion, with people trying to cross with children. And I'm surprised there is a whole lot of parents that walk their kids to school, which is really great, but I think we need to take some consideration of that. I also wanted to address the water situation. As Kat mentioned, you know, moving here, I was surprised to see a drought implementation plan. We're limited on the time and the amount of water that we can use, and now you're adding so many more homes to that area. I just would like an explanation from the board or whomever to how are we going to accommodate that when they've already limited us so much this year. I appreciate everybody's work towards this. I do appreciate Mr. Mosel listening to our concerns, but I would like these things kind of further addressed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to join in on the public input portion of this meeting? If not, I would allow the applicant to. Oh, are you?
Matt.
You coming up here, Matt?
Come on.
Because my name is Matt Nyberg. I live at 517 Dove Ranch Road, and I'm also on the planning commission. I spent 8 years as a board trustee, was on the planning commission. So to let you know a little bit of my bio, I have been there, so I know what's going on. First, I would like to address the traffic on Mustang, which was brought up. I think that the school district does a great job of blocking it off before parents can get in there and pick up. And people do park on the long side of the road, but I think that becomes then a marshal issue because that's not really an appropriate place to park. So when they bring up traffic concerns, I would incorporate that with the marshal's office and say, hey, how can we work with the school district? Because there are parents that are there at 2:15 to pick up their children, and it is ridiculous trying to get down that street. So, you know, that might be something that can be addressed possibly with the marshal's office going forward. But I think the developer here is willing to and has listened to everybody's accommodations and trying to make that work, even though it's downgraded as a piecemeal that he's giving this, this, and this. But I think it's lost track. He's still giving, and he's still trying to make that accommodation for the people around him. So I would, you know, credit him with that. But, you know, going back to the traffic issue, I think that could also be addressed within the marshal's office in the school district, because the school district does block that off, not allowing parents to pick up. And people do park on the side of the road where they shouldn't be. So maybe that's something that we could look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? So at this time, I would allow the applicant to maybe address some of those questions, and I saw Katie writing away. Maybe she can help.
So I would say the first thing that was brought up was the 20-year drought and the water, and because Public Works is here, that maybe the best thing to do is have them address that first.
Okay.
I just want to make sure to point you to the fact that the developer is required to do a water analysis on the consumptive use of those lots and has to bring that water to the town. Our engineer also determines if that's adequate. So in other words, the developer pays for their engineer and they pay for the town's engineer to review that water usage. I think what we talk about times, if everybody turned on their sprinkler at the same time, that would drain our water tanks. So sometimes the times are done more for management of our water tank, not necessarily water resources. So I'll let Jeremy Schultz, our Public Works Director, address the 20-year drought from his point of view.
Jeremy.
Well, I guess to simply state, the drought management plan wasn't necessarily developed to address the town's water resources on a regular basis. What it does is gives us a roadmap and an idea moving forward if we are to move into more severe drought and have some of those water resources over a longer period of time, be able to recoup some of those costs and give some operational controls to us to be able to operate the plant in the most efficient and effective manner possible to get rid of some of those evaporation facts. I know it comes up a lot where people are like, well, we can only water our grass every other day. That's a conservation measure that has been implemented, and like Katie said, it's for tank management. And so that's actually made a huge impact in our water production, and it's been able to allow us to cut that production by 30%. And so by having odd even watering and having people restrict some of that water, you don't need to water your grass 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. We set those times in, and that helps us be able to maintain some of the storage and be able to provide the fire flows, resources, and some of those storage requirements that the town is necessary, you know, that lessen the impact on the operation and productions at the plant. That the drought management plan isn't necessarily because we're running out of water. We still do have adequate capacity to be able to treat and serve this subdivision. We have capacity in the sewer plant to be able to treat and serve this subdivision in here as well. And so I don't think that's an issue of everybody getting an 8-ounce Dixie cup of water or getting a 16-ounce pint of water. I think that we have plenty of capacity to be able to provide services to the development. I don't know if that helps explain some of this away, or I could answer any other questions if you had some technical questions for me.
I think what I'm hearing from other neighbors.
Sorry. I need you to come up to the microphone and have this on record. This is
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. So I understand that we're in pretty good shape right now, but I'm trying to get us to be, you all to be more proactive than reactive. I'm just a believer in that. And I think that, yes, we have the capacity now, but in some time in the future here, maybe in our lifetimes, we may not have the capacity. We may have to improve our capacity, which is going to be costly. We know what those things cost more every year. So I guess as a resident and a citizen, let's plan for the future a little bit better on a cost. Let's help Jeremy get to where he needs to be 5, 10, 15 years from now by implementing cost to developers now that will carry into the future.
Do you have any?
I have a question of Jeremy.
Sure. Jeremy, could you step back up? Yes, please.
So as far as for being proactive, we currently are. So we're in the process of converting some of the irrigation waters from some of the previous subdivisions into municipal, and it's just a longer process, and we're actually getting really close to converting additional 1.4 CFS of water to municipal, which will almost double our raw water capabilities for treatment.
Yeah, in your opinion, is there a benefit to having the irrigation water that would be dedicated to the town used as irrigation water for watering lawns and then take some pressure, at least in the watering season, off our water treatment plant?
In my personal opinion?
Or professional
No, having
opinion?
secondary irrigation systems run by HOAs is a nightmare for public works. We have a hard time tracking that water. We have a hard time responding to leaks, and then a lot of times we have a hard time getting those secondary irrigation companies that run subdivisions to respond to some of those leaks in a timely fashion. We've had some of them run up to 4 or 5 days. So, I mean, as far as for me, it's a headache for me. I think the grass probably likes it more. It probably would rather have river water than treated water. So that's a decision that you guys would need to make as far as for those. But for these subdivisions, we do request for a water study and analysis that's reviewed by town staff as well. And then we would ask for some of the waters to come from this agricultural land and be conveyed to the town to be changed for municipal.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
So the next one I have regarding the lawyer's guidance on putting the zoning and annexation together in one package. And maybe the town attorney Goldman could respond to the state statute requiring annexation and why they're put together.
Yes, the state statute, Title 31, discusses the fact that annexation go hand in hand with an annexation agreement, and that there is timing, that the annexation agreement shall be filed and signed and executed within a certain number of days after the approval of the annexation. And along those lines, again, I was wondering if Mr. Mosel could comment on his meeting with some of the adjacent landowners and any agreements that he may have reached with the adjacent landowners as far as fencing and other matters with regards to the annexation agreements that is contemplated.
Thank you. Andy Arnold, SEH, agent to the applicant. In terms of agreements that or conditions of this annexation that we've agreed to, they've been outlined in the annexation agreement initially. Those in that annexation agreement, I do believe that it covers the water rights issues, which have been outlined by Katie and Jeremy about how that process will be handled. Public space, open space, amenities is also a condition in that agreement. But I think in terms of talking to the neighboring landowners and I guess the process of where we're going, which is sketch plan, subdivision, final plat, there's a regulatory power here, obviously, in terms of what the town will require with its code, with its process, with this annexation agreement. But there's also the consideration of the developer. Mr. Moselle is the owner of this land. He wants to develop this land, and he has a lot of power in terms of CC&R's deed restrictions to meet some of these requirements. Now, I know that that is not going to sit well, probably as well as maybe an annexation condition at this time with some of the neighboring landowners. But what we're hoping is that through this process, we've demonstrated a willingness to listen to our neighbors and to create a neighborhood that's in alignment with their concerns. So that in terms of those specific conditions that were outlined in some of the letters, most of those, and I believe it's Mrs. Tone's letter in particular, many of those some of those conditions are subsumed under the annexation agreements conditions. Other conditions are not within this annexations agreements conditions, but it does not mean that we're ignoring them because we need to move forward with our design. I did want to make one quick comment about the process in terms of initial zoning and annexation. Part of the reason why we need to do an initial zoning prior to annexation is because we need to know how to design given a certain zoning requirement. And then using that design, we can then produce a fiscal impact analysis given that those design requirements that the town zone would have. So that's where we are right now in terms of those conditions, and the annexation agreement does share some of those conditions which we've agreed to at this time.
Thank you. Michael, does that address your concern there?
Yes, it does. I just wanted to make sure that we had an understanding of any sort of agreements that we were going to be incorporating in this annexation agreement, because generally, it's not the town's job to get involved in those individual sorts of agreements. But if there was some sort of an agreement to incorporate certain very specific adjacent landowner conditions, I wanted to make sure that that was basically out in the open. And it sounds like the annexation agreement is presently drafted is what we have. There's nothing further to add. That's my understanding.
If I could just add, there is a...
Sorry, can you
Yeah.
step up to the microphone, please?
So there is a requirement of the annexation agreement that the applicant obtain drainage easement because detention ponds overflow and they have to go someplace. So there is an express condition in the the annexation agreement that they obtain those easements from the adjacent property owner. And I'm assuming it's draining to the adjacent property. And so that would need to be looked at in accordance probably with the town stormwater management plan, if there is one, and just looking at a more universal solution because there's going to be other development that comes along. And you want to make sure it's all coordinated drainage going out from that area of the town.
So the next item that I have is developer comes in to make money. The town should seek money up front. And my guess is that that would be a requirement of the land use code. And I'm not aware that we seek fiscal backfill for that fiscal deficit that the applicant explained. I don't know if the developer would like to address that in any way. And by the way, we are running on 1 hour at this point.
I'll be quick. Yes, for the fiscal impact analysis, it is correct. We did find that there was a $14,000 deficit. And as far as I know, within the code, there isn't a impact fee that the town levies. There are 2 impact fees that I'm aware of. One was the school's impact fee. The other is the park impact fee. And I think this is important to bring up. We did not include the park impact fee as part of our fiscal impact analysis. Part of the reason for that is because we're making an active effort to include parks and open space into this development. However, if you were to include the park impact fee in that fiscal impact analysis, I believe it's a little just shy of $500 per home, which comes out to about $39,000 of a one-time impact fee for the development, which would then turn it into a surplus. However, we thought that that would be inappropriate to show, given that it was an impact fee and that we're actively talking about whether or not to bring parks into this. I believe that park impact fee would fall well short of the cost to build the open space, the perimeter trail, the pocket park, which is why we removed it from the analysis.
So if you'll stay there, the next one is they're disappointed that R20 is not considered. The applicant address that?
Yes, so we did look at the possibilities in the zoning code. I mean, we're not gonna lie, there is a market reality behind this development. But on the other hand, one of the things that we were sensitive to is that an R20 zone would create much larger lots that would then in turn be much more expensive homes. And we understand that there is a countywide housing crisis right now. Attainable housing is becoming more and more difficult to get. And so having a less dense zoning category, the only way to make the project pencil at that point would be to have very expensive homes in that area. Whether or not that would be feasible is not really what what I'm trying to evaluate here. It was more looking at your comprehensive plan, looking at the county, and trying to make sure that we were able to have a development that was compatible with surrounding developments and that could also bring about attainable housing in Bayfield.
So the next item that I have is retention is labeled as open space, questionable if it's actually usable as open space. The pop-up park is very small because the area is added to the trail, some of the ditch easement and the open space. Just any response to that, the open space?
Yes, so in terms of the design that I have up on the table here, I do apologize that I don't have more copies that would be better for the people here, but we have we're assuming we're going towards sketch plan on February 8th. We will be sending out this sketch plan as a public notification next week by January 25th. In terms of specific spacing requirements, the detention pond would be theoretically grassed. It would not necessarily be a permanent water fixture. And then in terms of the open space pocket park, it is half an acre, which is a legitimate size, I believe, for a pocket park. And so I did look at other park space requirements around Southwest Colorado. Usually it's about 10% of the total property size. We're at 17% with this, so we think that we're a little bit over what is typical in La Plata County, Uray, Durango. But again, we will be sending out that sketch plan, and I want to remind everyone, it's just a sketch plan. We'll have to go through preliminary plat and final plat with that design.
Can I ask a question? Who maintains like the trail or the park? Is it an HOA? And then what happens if there is no HOA, if they decide not to be an HOA anymore?
Well, at this time, we are not under the impression that the town would be maintaining these park facilities. So at this time, we would imagine it being an HOA.
Okay.
What happens if that HOA were to fold? I don't have an answer to that at this time.
Not a typical thing.
So the next question I have is probably for the applicant as well. I cannot see, I probably will not be able to see the mountains from my home in the future.
A comment?
Kathy, it's a
These will
concern
all
to
be
you. It's a concern.
glass homes.
It's a concern. And then a traffic study, Clover, Louisiana, traffic pattern, Mustang, that also included the children crossing at Clover, Louisiana, and Mustang, and of course, those were the issues that were brought up regarding the school in that vicinity.
And we thank you for those comments. They're noted, and they will be addressed in our traffic study moving forward.
And we went back to drought times and wording, which we've already addressed. I don't have anything else other than the marshal's office should probably deal with some of the traffic backup on Mustang, and of course, those are all things that we deal with in operations. So.
No further questions?
Yeah, I have a question on the annexation agreement, on number 3. It says that the developer will apply for and obtain a review permit for the gas well site. What is that, the review permit for the gas well site?
Chris, do you want to speak more to that?
The town's code requires a review permit. It's a type of process that's in your code. I'd have to look to see if that's just planning commission only or if it comes up to you, but it is a formal process in your code. So they'd have to apply for that concurrent with the subdivision, so that would just run up the flagpole. I'm assuming that would be done with the preliminary review and not necessarily with sketch plan review.
Yeah, I guess I was just more specifically, what is that for the gas well? What are they reviewing?
That's a good question. Your code really doesn't dive into that topic. So I think that that's at the discretion of the review, per the criteria that's in the code for the review permit, and I'm not super familiar with that. But it also, if it's, most review permits, use permits are somewhat discretionary, and you can look at specific criteria if you wanted to, that might be out there. So I was pleased to see there is open space around the gas well now. There wasn't before. That's helpful to provide some buffer to that gas well site. But beyond that, I think I'd just be speculating, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's for your new planner to have fun with.
Katie, was that it on your end there?
That's all the questions I have that were not repeats.
Okay, I just want to just say to the board, yeah, we have listened. I would like to ask you to wrap up any just clarification questions. I expect a healthy debate, discussion, and deliberation, but I would like to do that in the regular agenda portion, and allow us to have that conversation. So, and just, to address the room, look, we are all up here because we care. We all have a vision for Bayfield, and, I appreciate all your comments, and I hope that we got some clarification for you today. So at this time, I would like to close the public hearing and resume the regular scheduled meeting. Does anybody need a 3-minute break? Everybody okay?
I'm good.
Okay. We will keep it rolling. All right, we're moving on to our new business action agenda. Ordinance 472 Mustang Crossing annexation and zoning. So, I'll open it up to the board for discussion.
Can I ask a question,
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Michael?
Michael, this is directed at you.
Yes.
Okay. Throughout the presentation, the applicant was making, or said a lot of things in the packet that we received, and I guess I saw as kind of like assertions as to how they want to see this developed, and I realize it's a conceptual plan, but I remember you're telling us many times that assertions made by the applicant, if they are not complied with, then constitute nullification of the permit or nullification of action taken by the board. Is that the case in this case because it's a conceptual plan? Does that apply to that? I mean, because everything is sort of nebulous now.
Yeah, and you've answered your question. It really doesn't. The things that we are concerned with are the, whether this property meets all the qualifications under the annexation statutes. And specifically, after your deliberations, you need to make findings based upon the completion of the hearing, findings of fact and conclusions based on the fact that they've established that they meet the criteria under CRS 31-12-104 and 31-12-105. Those are those factors having to do with the fact that the property's contiguous on a couple of sides and that it meets the urban development of the town of Bayfield. And those are really the things that you're to be determining today. A lot of the statements with regards to the proposed development were qualified by the applicant with regards to the fact that they are going to bring conceptual development plan and that they will bring preliminary plat and so forth. And that's where you would hold them to their word when they come before you on the actual development.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy to start getting ahead and start thinking down the road, and all of these conversations spark kind of those thoughts, and I just want to reel everybody back in and just kind of focus on what we're here to decide today, and give it that thought, and let's stay in that lane for right now, if we can. So, do we have any other discussion, comments?
I have a comment about our R10. The fact that, because our R10 designation and our R20 designation. And I'll go back and speak to this a little bit further, because I mentioned this when Mason Meadows was going through its process, that by having an R10 designation on a lot that is so hard and fast as far as the rule, can't be less than 10,000 feet. But it can exceed that. And so we end up with these subdivisions that are 10,000-foot cookie cutter subdivisions, a la the one presented here tonight. Excuse me. When Mesa Meadows came up, it was my suggestion at the time that they take and modify our R10 so that we had average sizes of 10,000-foot lots, so that you could have a range of lot sizes from like 7,000 to 14,000 foot, so that you end up with neighborhoods that are a little bit more, less cookie cutters, I guess, what I'm saying. So that you also give some differences in lot size, which would be appealing to some homeowners, because some homeowners aren't interested in a large lot. Other owners like a large yard and are into that kind of thing. Then the other thing question I have is on ADUs in R10. Do we allow that?
Yes.
So
Can you define an ADU,
an
please?
accessory dwelling unit.
Thank you.
And so if we allow ADUs, this needs to be contemplated in this overall question of 80 lots as well, just throwing that out there.
So I had some comments on zoning as well. I brought up the zoning map, but it's actually also over here. So R20 is that magenta color that's over by our middle school and our high school and down off of Mountain View. And everything across the other side of town is R10. So while I would love to see more properties like mine, I live in an R20 in the middle school area, and people love our lots. They are jealous that we have so much property. We get to park our RVs on our property. We get to do different things with our land than other people on the other side of town. Everything that I see on the other side of town is R10. So as much as I would love to see R20, and I think there's a realtor market for it, I think that they've asked for the correct zone for this proposal.
I would agree with that.
That's my opinion.
No, I totally agree with that. I think if we make it too big, it's just gonna boost it right out of affordability range, and people need homes. We don't have homes for our local fire
And this
department
would
people.
so if we
and,
did ask for
you
our
know,
20,
I mean,
this would half the amount of lots that they would be able to put in. And most of the homes would probably not be able to sell for under $500,000 at least. So that's what my personal opinion.
This is, I'm sorry, this is time for the board to.
The other thing I think that we haven't really discussed here, which is the traffic that 80 additional units will generate here. And we're only showing 2 points of hard access on the map at this point, with 2 future points of access. I personally think there needs to be at least a third additional future point to the north that will have the potential to tie into 526. However, as we look at these points of access that are drawn into the south across the other Ludwig property, what I would like to see is the Ludwigs give us an idea of what they want in way of access to the south. Because, let's be honest, they're asking for an R10 or an annexation also in this process. And So, no, not in this particular process, but in this bigger process. So what I want to see is where the possibility of future roads tying into 521.
Well, it says on page.
I know, I see it. I
Okay.
want
Well,
to
I think that's,
see a map.
I think that's valid. It's a valid concern. It's a topic of conversation that has come up over and over. And
And-
once again, I
and like
think
I said,
we will have a traffic study done.
A traffic study is a necessary evil for this subdivision. And some type of a shared cost arrangement to address access up Clover and along Mustang and perhaps Louisiana also. But at any rate, 80 additional lots at full build-out does generate a lot of traffic. And I don't think that we can anticipate those are all going to be retirees.
Thoughts, comments, questions?
I agree with David on the traffic, but that's not what we're deciding tonight.
Right.
So we'll
Right.
look at the traffic study, because I also want to know more about water, because
Me too.
everyone's asking about
Right.
it, but that's not for tonight
Right.
either. So tonight is, does this meet the requirements? And we get another opportunity to discuss those details.
Absolutely.
And I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think just because I am wanting to say yes to the annexation does not mean that I'm going to say yes necessarily to the project itself once it gets there. I want to see those water reports and I want to see those traffic reports. And, you know, if they don't cut mustard, it's not going to work for us, you know. But to decide for today and what's being presented to us today, I think we're pretty clear on where we all want to go.
I think it's good for our developer to know that these are things that are going to be coming down the pipe.
Absolutely.
that
Yeah,
would be-
those are important to us,
Yeah.
very important.
You want to comment on the annexation agreement?
Sure.
Page 2, number 9, minor thing. But I think in sentence 3, the third line where it says similar, or will prepare a water demand analysis or similar to quantity, I think it should read quantify.
Oh, okay, so just,
Like I said, minor thing.
okay, so just,
But it makes a
It
difference.
does, for lack of a comma. I mean,
okay, so,
It's
I'm
quantity
sorry,
versus
I've lost the
quantity.
page.
it was on
Page-
page 9
No,
of the.
page 2
oh,
of the
well,
annexation agreement, number
Page
9.
2.
Number
Number
9,
9.
water rights,
All right.
second sentence, third line.
Which page is that?
It was,
God, who's-
99.
Thank you. I'm like way
Who's
past
the,
it.
who's the
Wow.
geek now?
did your homework.
Yeah, that's right.
so many pages here on this.
You know, I welcome any more questions or comments or discussion. I feel like if the board is ready to
We are.
move forward, I would entertain a motion. And you can note those that change in the annexation agreement.
Well,
My suggestion is that if anyone's going to make a motion with regards to annexation itself, that you look to perhaps the draft ordinance for the findings. There are 4 findings and some sub-findings under number 4. And my suggestion is that if the person, the mover, wants to incorporate those findings, that should be done. And if there's any change or modification of those findings, that should be part of the motion as well.
That is.
108,
oh,
109.
okay.
Yeah, 108. And so, Michael, just to clarify, we can entertain a motion to include both of these, the rezoning and the annexation in one motion, or do we want separate motions on?
Separate motions would be preferred.
Okay. Did you guys find the conditions?
Yeah, I've got the
Okay.
conditions here, and I don't.
So, I'm sorry, you want one on the ordinance, one on the agreement?
Here on, let's see where we are.
Yes.
Here,
Right.
page
eight.
What was, I
96.
didn't really understand why we had to incorporate,
It gives
I mean, they
us
got
page
four,
The conditions, just,
the four findings,
Mhm.
conditions, he wants that incorporated in what?
into the second motion for the annexation
For the
agreement.
annexation agreement, okay.
Yes.
Well, we really haven't found anything different than what our findings show. So if that's said, Madam Mayor, I would move that we adopt ordinance 472 with the findings 1 through 4, which shows that it complies with CRS 3112-104, complies with CRS 3112-105, complies with the Constitution Article 2, and the rezoning meets the land use code criteria.
Am I?
That's the second, that's the motion. We have, within that motion, you have the 4 findings and sub-findings A through G. This
H.
or excuse me, A through H, and you can find this on page 97.
I'm a little confused. So, I know, but that's pertaining to the annexation agreement, correct?
So,
What it-
I would like to point out that section 6 in the ordinance, basically at the very bottom, says annexation agreement plat are not record, this should become void and the town approval of the zoning and annexation will expire if the annexation agreement and annexation plat are not recorded by January 12th, 2023 and not 2022.
Oh, okay.
So just kind of FYI.
Oh, okay.
That's a error in the year.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the table.
Well, hang on,
That's what-
is there another typo underneath that on the date
Plat are not recorded by January 12th.
on 2022?
Yeah,
Approved
since
by,
this is
yeah.
Section
It says
6.
2023. There's a typo on that.
Section what?
Just
Six.
below section 6, approved by the trustees. You have it.
On this
Next year.
18th day of January 2022. If I'm on page 109.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on that, we're
We're on
looking at like the pre.
Not to, did Michael?
It's
hear
in
the
there
motion?
twice in our packet.
Yeah, that, Michael, did you hear the motion? We would just like a thumbs up if you're okay.
In all honesty, Mayor, I really caught very little of it.
He's hard to hear.
David, could you please repeat your motion?
Just get closer to the microphone.
Okay, I move we adopt ordinance number 472 with the findings 1 through 4, which finds that the annexation complies with CRS 31-12-104. Number 2, it complies with CRS 31-12-105. The annexation complies with Colorado Constitution, Article 2, Section 30, and that the rezoning meets the zoning criteria found in the land use code, Section 3-10, Section B, subsection 15.
Incorporating all the.
And
sub
incorporating
parts.
all of the sub A through H.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion from the board? Roll call, please.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
And so Katie, now on the annexation agreement, are we looking for the, allowing myself to
The
execute?
board to execute it when this is complete.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion pertaining to the Mustang Crossing annexation agreement.
Madam Mayor, I would like to appoint the mayor to finalize and execute the annexation agreement and annexation map in regards to Mustang Crossing.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion, comments? Roll call.
Trustee Black.
Yes,
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to Resolution 509, the Bayfield East Annexation Parts 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So the applicant, or the representative of the applicant is here. I don't know if he wants to speak to this. We have a complete package for Bayfield East annexation. And the dates on this, I'm just going to pull it up so I have it. Provide. They're asking also for a comp plan amendment. So there's a comp plan amendment for the Planning Commission, February 2nd. The Bayfield, the Board of Trustees will consider that on February 15th. The Planning Commission will review and consider the zoning of the Bayfield East annexation on March 8th. Public hearing shall be held on March 15th regarding the annexation. And there are part 1 and part 2 are the only two that require a comp plan amendment. Parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be considered for zoning and for annexation. There's quite a extensive legal description, including the signed petitions for this annexation. There's 4 different parcels of land that will be annexed.
Okay, I believe we have Andy stepping up to the mic again.
Andy Arnold, SEH. I am the agent for this application, Bayfield East annexation. Just here to, I guess, field any questions regarding that resolution, right, Katie?
Does the board have any questions?
not really.
No. I think
We're
we're
just setting dates. to
Yes, we're-
listen to it.
pretty straightforward on this one.
Great. This will be a fun one.
Yes, it will.
So if there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution setting the comp plan amendment, zoning, and annexation public hearings.
So move.
And just to be clarified, that was Resolution 509.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Black.
Yes,
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to the discussion portion of the evening. We have our solid waste collection drafted changes.
Yeah, so we basically we spent some time. We updated our water ordinance. We updated our sewer ordinance. Brought it up from 2008 to 2021, and of course that leaves a couple minor issues with our solid waste. At the time that the solid waste ordinance was adopted, you didn't have bear-proof trash cans. So it actually allowed you to stack things on top and butt next to the can or the poly cart, but that you can't do that anymore because it's all automatic now. You know, truck comes by, grabs it, pinches it, and dumps it into the truck. So as we're updating this, I did send letters to all of the customers that should still be on residential garbage pickup. That is required in your code. It was waived with really no authority by the staff at the time. And of course, at the time, we just let these customers know that they're going to get a cart back and we'll start charging them in February. So we'd like to make some changes. We need to update the definitions. I found quite a few codes, more modern codes, that we could really update it and really provide some definitions. Modify multifamily trash collection 8 to 2 with voluntary contract inclusion. So in other words, there was, the town did not really allow anything over 8 multifamily, and that was kind of, was just whatever. And then there are some units that are not complying with that. So it basically removes it down to 2. And the reason that is because that a lot of multifamily units could have a dumpster and basically contract directly with a trash collector, and basically make it very clear that we're probably gonna have a lot of voluntary inclusion of multifamily over probably the 20 units, but at least make sure that it's in the code and not just kind of whatever the staff or whatever the customer decides. We have a couple of businesses that only need to use a polycart. They don't need a dumpster. They don't need to contract specifically by themselves. Typically they have household garbage. There's a couple on Mill Street that just use household garbage, and we've required them to actually contract by themselves for GFL or another trash company, which gets very confusing. A lot of this didn't make any sense. So there's a couple exemptions, and when I sent out the letter, I made sure that I wanted people to give me a call back if they felt that there was something unfair about bringing them back in and requiring them to have residential trash pickup. So I have 3 of them listed here. Residential customer has an eligible business with trash collection and pickup, or is an employee of a business that allows dumping of residential garbage. There were a couple responses to that one that is their perk at their job, and they felt that it wasn't fair that they then had to also pay for that garbage pickup. Keep in mind, we're not requiring that they get it collected. We just don't want it collecting on property. I mean, typically it's a health and safety issue regarding trash. So you just still want to make sure it gets picked up and removed. Disability prevents a residence to manage a cart, and I had a couple of those. I shouldn't say a couple, I had one. And this one customer referred me to another person, wanted me to call them, and I said, thank you. I said, I'm not going to make that phone call. They certainly welcome to call me, but we certainly understand. There are some caretakers, probably about a year ago, I remember, that said that their client could not take care of the polycart, and they were taking care of the garbage. So it's managed by another individual. Keep in mind, we still want the garbage removed. We don't want it stacking up in homes or in backyards or whatever. And then I have a senior citizen that shares a polycart in the neighborhood with permission from a neighbor. And I thought, well, that seems to make sense. He explained his garbage use or why he didn't really need a cart on his own. I thought, well, I think that makes sense. So kind of interested in, if these exemptions kind of fall to where the board would like to see. We'll draft an ordinance pertaining to some of these and try to make sure that they're justified. I don't think I just want them at the window making these decisions. I think somehow there's got to be a little process to make sure that they're still getting their trash picked up. And then we have them identified that if the trash doesn't get picked up, you've just waived your exemption. So we need to make sure that that happens. So looking for your input on those 3 exemptions.
I don't think that they're unreasonable at all. I agree that we should have a process put in place, to identify whether their trash is getting picked up, and maybe even a fine if it isn't, just because then they're causing an issue, a health hazard.
Is this any kind of nightmare for staff, or is this a pretty easy?
Well, I think it'd be nice to know what they can exempt and not just
make that
decision at the window.
I just don't want it to be a billing nightmare and any extra hassle for staff to have to deal with.
So I have about 8 forms that I'm starting to put together, from tenants to payment systems to the water use if they're on a different water system, for sewer usage. So we're coming up with all these, and this would just be another one that we put into place. And of course, be training for staff and how to accept and require that they're looking for certain things. Keep in mind that you now have a $100 transfer fee. And so it's only fair if a landlord wants to make sure that the tenant, that the name of the account is in the tenant's name, then we have to do quite a process to transfer that account. We're going to charge them $100. If they still want to make sure that their name is on it, don't want to pay the $100, well, that's fine. It's going to be, you know, John Smith in care of their tenant, whoever that may be. And so that will help, you know, for at least relieve staff from that extra burden. Well, at least we'll be paid for it versus just doing it. And this would be another thing. Basically, there would be a form, and, you know, from, I would just say on an annual basis, it doesn't hurt to say, you know, the garbage, there's no garbage collecting on that property. And around the summertime when anything, you know, but I think that would be something just annual, just check to make sure that this trash is still getting picked up. And the one thing I don't want to have happen is that if customers were giving some certain special, like senior break or whatever else, when they transferred it, the next person, if they were 15 years old, they were now getting the senior citizen break. We want to stop that from occurring, that they should all be accountable for the next customer.
I mean, I think it's
agree with
completely
that, yeah.
reasonable. And I'm assuming Rachel's gonna get her red pen out and.
Oh, we're gonna have lots of red pens.
So you'll, I mean, I think we're all in agreement there.
It'll be an ordinance that
Okay.
comes before you in February. It won't be effective until March. But you know, this is something you could adopt as an emergency ordinance if you felt like, you know, Mr. Romero was here and felt that it wasn't fair that he has to go back to, you know, having a poly cart and paying for that. And then basically the next bullet point, or the big bullet point, is update the requirements as outlined in the sheet attached. Jill Weber has been working with GFL to basically update, you know, actually making our form for them to show them how you're supposed to get your garbage picked up. A lot of the complaints we get are, you know, they stack stuff on top of the garbage, or they, you know, it's open, and of course everything spills out, things aren't actually in a bag. They're just thrown in the poly cart. So basically we just need to update this, if nothing else, to give our customers better information.
Okay.
I know if I overstuff mine too and shut the lid, when they come by, the lid won't release. So you have to be careful with them.
And then the phone calls start.
Oh, and I'm out there opening it for the trash guy. It's gotta go.
Okay. I mean, it's all
You know, and
good updates there.
And I'm sensitive to those seniors because, and I know Josh probably is too. He probably uses garbage like I do, takes his cart out maybe once every 2 weeks, maybe once every 3 weeks, right? Something like that, Mayor.
I guess we're gonna share.
So yeah, so maybe town board can just share a cart.
I'll let Bob come over and dump his stuff in mine over there in the
There you go.
neighborhood.
You're pretty close.
Yeah. Okay, so that we'll revisit that.
Yeah, you'll see an ordinance at your next meeting. And then the last one is to modify the control plan to modify number 34 to write in and write out. And I gave you the whole access control plan. It's not the developer for the 2107 Bayfield Parkway wanted that write in, write out. I think with the discussion with CDOT, they may have given up on that. But, you know, I think at some point, I think it does make sense where if you're looking at a light at Bayfield East annexation at that east intersection, and we do get traffic slowed down, you know, that right in, right out may be a future, even if they don't design it to begin with. So.
I don't see it happening. CDOT really is they own, They're so territorial. That's
Well,
just
they can't, the CDOT will not do anything if the access plan still requires that the town of Bayfield and the county of La Plata County want it closed. So if at least we change that part, we would have the option of trying to convince CDOT, whether it's today or years down the road.
maybe when we get to that point of having a conversation about that east intersection, we can have further discussions about other points of access.
I think there's gonna be a lot of
within
discussions
that.
on, with CDOT on this, the annexations you've got coming.
So, you know, and the thing is that when you look at how Mancus and Bayfield got basically bisected by the highways back in the 50s, they didn't do the towns any favors by the way they went about going, moving highways, and then allowing access off farm access points. Because that's what Commerce Drive is a farm access. So we get what we, you know, if you're not paying attention to things, I guess that's what you get.
Any other questions, comments?
No. You can always come up with more comments. You want more comments?
I would just ask, are you opposed
Um,
to considering it?
No, I mean, I think we're, like you said, I think we have a lot coming our way, and we're gonna probably have many more discussions on this, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Board reports. Anybody got any updates?
RHA, we had a response to our RFQ that you guys probably heard about. It's Capelli Consulting and Project Moxie. We created a subcommittee to be able to ask Capelli and Project Moxie, Jen Lopez, some questions about their proposal that they sent us. So that'll happen here within the next couple of weeks, I believe. And then we also are seeking a board member at large. And that board member will hopefully have experience and expertise in real estate, banking, finance, legal, or social services. All members of the board must be residents or employed in La Plata County and must be at least 18 years of old at the time of their appointment.
Yeah.
Moving right along, just waiting to get things settled, maybe get us a little staff, maybe get us a director, and, you know, so we're looking forward to new changes here soon.
Nice.
Okay, and just a reminder that the candidates need to return their board packets by 4 o'clock on the 24th. There is a Habitat for Humanity open house on January 29th from 10 to 2. And that's in your packet. And thanks for toughing this one out. This is a long one.
I had a senior board meeting, and we are invited to come to their meetings. Again, we have a new board.
Oh.
Leroy Powers is your president, Ann Rudolph is your vice president, Maureen Cleveland is the secretary, Vicky Mosguy is your treasurer. And they mostly had questions about probably a lot of stuff that we have questions about. They want to know when their deep clean is going to happen because they just have stuff everywhere, like even bees and bugs, and they want their fridges back on and stuff like that. So that was their main concern. They do want to look into security cameras because they're having stuff stolen, which we're already looking into. So that was a big thing, and they were going to email about possibly getting a key again, but I know that was a point of contention and problem, so I told them that they would need to speak with Katie mostly on that. But that was a good meeting, and they were happy to have us and happy to have us back again. So
Yeah, thanks for attending that. I'm glad that we're back in the loop and that we have some representation. Anybody else? All right. Michael, thank you for all of your clarification tonight. And I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. It is 8:30.
Well, that wasn't so bad. No, really, I thought it was.
No, I
thought it was
know.
gonna go on till about
Might as
10
well pass
o'clock.
it on down.
Got another one coming your way, guys. Don't leave yet. It's not mine.
It's not me.
Kelly, don't leave yet.
Who is Scott?
Your papers too, I'm sorry.
He needs a signature. Don't leave.
Yeah, he's our ex, Parks and Rec director, actually.
I'm sorry, he's what?
He worked for Parks and Rec for,
Parks and
gosh, I don't even know. Probably like 5 or 6 years until
Good guy.
Becky took over.
Is it Dove Ranch Road? Dove Ranch Drive.
What about,
I don't send anything there.
Rainbow?
Well, I don't live there. How